Well, Jimbo Fisher wants to get back into coaching. He's got all the money in the world. He had that buyout that was around $100 million from Texas A&M a couple of years ago, but he's getting that itch. He told our John Talty, quote, "I want to coach somewhere that's committed to winning. Just make sure they give us the resources to be able to win. I know it's about money, but you've got to have the resources to put into the game to win and do it the right way. The grass is just as green everywhere." And so is the money when you've gotten the payout that he did. Richard Johnson there, Danny Kanell here. Danny, we'll start with you on this as a guy that coached Florida State, your alma mater, to the 2013 national championship in college football. I mean, that job could come open. Do you see him potentially returning?
Yes, I think he's made it clear. I mean, he's out there saying, I want to be coaching. I'm preparing to coach. I'm looking at different things. And I still think he's a really good football coach. It was not that long ago when we have all these columns written in the offseason of top 10 coaches in college football. Jimbo Fisher was in everybody's top five for sure, and some top threes, with a national championship under his belt at Florida State, with a national championship as an assistant back at LSU. He can coach football. I think there's a couple spots. Virginia Tech comes to mind that I think would be a really good fit, considering his ties in the region to West Virginia, where he's from. So I think there's some really good landing spots for him. And I think he is in a position where he can be smart and look at a place that is committed to winning, and that maybe he will go coach on a little bit of discount because he's made so much money, just to get your foot back in the door. And oh, by the way, as opposed to paying me top dollar money, go give that to the players and help us get a competitive roster. Richard,
does it sound feasible to you that he could return at the level of a Florida State?
I love the point Danny makes, because that's quite literally the value proposition in my mind. I got all this buyout money that's parked in the bank account that's earning interest. How about we put the money that you would otherwise pay to me into the roster? That is not something I think a lot of other coaches are going to be able to say, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of these agents are not going to want to backslide from the market rate, because you do it for one of my clients, then you're going to have leverage for other schools to do it with all of my clients. So as far as Jimbo's concerned, I do think he has a unique case. My question about Jimbo, though, is this. What's going to happen when we get down to who's going to call plays or not? We are seeing a lot of different coaches have issues as a play caller right now in the rev share post NIL era. People are on Sark about it right now. It's one of the reasons Billy Napier just got fired at Florida, because he didn't hire an offensive coordinator who called plays and wanted to continue to call it. We know what Jimbo Fisher is as an offensive mastermind, but can he adapt to this new era? A national champion in the previous era, but what about now in 2025?
Yeah, Danny, would you want him to be calling his own plays at Florida State, or bring somebody else in if he comes?
If he was at Florida State,
yeah.
I don't think Florida State's a good option for him. I don't think the return comes back. But if you're at a place like Virginia Tech, who could use a coach with his cachet, I would not have a problem. I personally think it's a little bit overblown. I know there haven't been many examples of coaches that have won at the college level that are actually the play callers too. But I think if it entices him to come back, and you say, if you want to call plays, by all means, go ahead. If you're getting that discounted rate, I think it makes it attractive.
All right, so he won a national championship in 2013. There's another former national championship winning coach that wants to get back into coaching. Ed Oregeron was the coach of one of the greatest college teams we've ever seen in the modern era, that 2019 LSU team. But Richard, how much substance is there? Like, is somebody going to look at him and say, yes, in 2026, 27, this guy can lead our football program?
Well, I think Ed is interesting as a concept as a coach right now, because yes, he's got a national championship in the case. But what he has versus Jimbo is his buyout money runs out in December. So he wants to get back in, because them checks are about to stop coming, I should say. Ed is interesting because he sort of made some comments recently that he would be interested in coming back as like a defensive line coach. That to me signals a level of, some may call it desperation, others may just call it want to, as far as a desire to return. At the end of the day, Ed Oregeron wants to be back on a sideline. I think he's probably pretty bored. I think he's probably tired of hanging out at the beach. I think he wants to be with a team. I think he's still young enough, in his early 60s, that he still thinks he has a little bit left in him to deliver. And I wonder, there's some schools on the West Coast, Oregon State, UCLA, that I think Ed would like to get back to because of his ties on the West Coast.
Yeah, I think he's one of those coaches kind of caught magic in a bottle with the national championship at LSU. I think he's probably designed, and his skill set is more of a positional coach, especially defensive line. Every defensive line coach that I ever saw on any organization I was ever a part of sort of had that Ed Ogeron type, the yeller guy who's got a ton of energy, who gets those guys motivated. I don't know if his skill set is suited for a head coaching position, as to why I think it fell off so quickly. Now, I do think if there was a smaller school, a group of 5 school, who wanted to make a splash and a name from a national championship winning coach, I think that would be interesting, and I think somebody that might kick the tires on it. I don't know how well it would play out, but I think Ed Ogeron I picture more as an assistant coach like Richard is talking about, and I think he'd be a good one. I think he's done really good with defensive line positionally. I just don't know if he's a great potential coach for a Power 4 level program.
All right, we're talking title-winning coaches who have been out of the game for at least a couple of years. Those 2 guys won a college championship. Jon Gruden won a Super Bowl championship. He said recently, who knows what will happen, but I'm preparing myself, as always, to coach. But behind the scenes, we're getting plenty of football, I promise you. Said that to Barstool Sports, where he works now. This is a guy, though, Richard, that hasn't been in college as a coach since he was an assistant in 1991. How feasible is this?
Yeah, well, the college game has changed in 1,000 different ways since he was last in college. I mean, heck, it's changed 1,000 different ways just in the last couple of years. I know for a fact that Jon Gruden has at least discussed with potential college GM candidates what it would take to kind of pair up, right? Kind of be a package deal at a college job if that's what ends up happening. I think a lot of people would wonder, well, why would Jon Gruden want to get into college? Well, I think you should remember that Jon Gruden is actively suing the National Football League. And I think when that comes into the picture, he may not be able to go back to the NFL as a head coach unless that lawsuit were to be dropped and were to go away. So I think when Jon Gruden says something like, oh, I died a coach in the SEC, like he said a couple months ago, I think you get it. I think he's probably a guy who doesn't want to sit on the shelf at all either, probably tired of just watching film and doing pre-draft stuff, probably thinks he can give a lot to an organization. But, just because you were a champion in the NFL a while ago, by the way, does not mean that you will be a really good college coach. Ask North Carolina.
Yeah, wait, that's a good point with the Bill Belichick thing and a longtime NFL guy just not working in college.
I think if Bill Belichick was crushing it at North Carolina, I think people would be lined up for Jon Gruden and say, let's try to replicate that. It is a very copycat league. It is also, in this hiring circles, I think they don't want to make the same mistake. And I think that's going to really hurt Jon Gruden's chances because you've seen it is not easy. It is a totally, totally different animal coaching in the NFL versus coaching in college, especially with the lack of structure that takes place. And I think that's something that, if you had a system that had been in place, well, I don't want to say 50 years like the NFL is, where everybody has the same positions, GMs with the same power structure, with the same roles. If you just talk to 10 or 15 different college programs, they all have GMs, but some have different roles that they're filling in the organization. So it is a complete mess right now, and you better hope that you get somebody who really knows the ins and outs of college football, or else you'll find yourself in a disaster like you are in North Carolina. So I think that is really hurting Jon Gruden's chances. Not to say he might find himself back at an opportunity at a college level. I just think it's going to significantly hurt his chances based on what's happening in Chapel Hill.
Richard, Gruden, Oregeron, Jimbo, are any of those guys coaching in college next year?
I think if I had to pick one of them, I go Jimbo.
All right, Danny?
I think Jimbo, too. He's got a pretty good job on TV. I think he can be selective, but I think the amount of turnover we're going to see, a good spot for him might open up.
All right, Danny Kanell, Richard Johnson with us discussing 3 title-winning coaches who are itching to get back into the game and maybe even the college game in Jon Gruden's case. Cover 3 podcast. Big game previews today from Danny Kanell and the crew.